I'm delighted to see so many of you here, and warm welcome to this webinar, which is organised as part of Neurodiversity Celebration Week. I'm Andrea McLeod, and I'm based in the Autism Centre for Education and Research, known as ACER, which I think some of you at least will know, which is part of the Department of Disability, Inclusion and Special Needs here at the University of Birmingham. This is the first of two webinars that we're hosting, and our aim with these is to share with you some examples of innovations that we think can empower autistic adults and young people in this webinar, particularly with additional learning disabilities, to have a voice. Before we start, I want to briefly explain some background to this. So in the field of autism, and especially in work with autistic adults and young people, there's often fantastic work being done on a small scale by practitioners and family members. It can be really life-changing to the individuals concerned, but it's not necessarily recognised beyond that immediate setting. On our courses, our students are often practitioner researchers, which means that in their daily lives, they are practitioners, either in formal roles or informally as family members or carers. And naturally, then they use their studies with us to explore practice and to build evidence of what works in the real world. So in these webinars, what we want to share with you is this, giving you examples of that work and the impact that it has. And in particular, we want to share practical recommendations of how you might be able to take this away and use it in your context. This webinar will focus on examples of how we might reduce barriers for a population that is often neglected in conversations about autism, and that is autistic individuals who have additional learning disabilities. So we're going to look firstly at creative ways of enabling autistic students to have a voice that is meaningful and that is listened to, and then at ways in which environment can influence opportunities for autistic individuals. So just in terms of some housekeeping, and some of this I might have to update depending on what we've managed with our settings. But it's important to say this is a positive webinar, and we very much take a strengths-based approach, but nevertheless, we're aware that some of what we're discussing might trigger memories of bad experiences. So we just want to remind you, the webinar is being recorded. It will become available on YouTube. If you want to take a break, please do, and you can access the recording later. And the recording from today will be available on our ACER resource page within the next few weeks. And we'll keep you posted about that. If you would like to ask a question, put this in the question and answer slot at the bottom. We may not have a chat. I was going to say, please do chat as we go along, but focus on the question and answer slot, please. And we will try and enable the chat if we can. We can't guarantee that we'll have time for every question, but you can find the presenter contact details at the end of their slides, and we're very happy to hear from all of you. So now I'm very pleased to welcome our first speaker, Helen Evans. Helen is a doctoral researcher with the Autism Centre for Education and Research, having also completed her master's here at the university studying autism in adulthood. Helen is going to explore accessible approaches to student voice from her work within further education, and I'll hand over to her to tell you more, and I will mute and switch my camera off. So over to you. Thanks, Helen.
Hello, everybody. So as Andrea said, I'm a final year PhD student here at the University of Birmingham. Started with the Masters in Education in Autism Adults several years ago now, and haven't stopped. I've had, for about the past 25 years, I've been working with people of various ages who usually have learning disabilities, and some of those also were autistic or are autistic as well. So I'm just going to share my screen. There it is. Okay. So this presentation will be split into 3 parts. First, I'll take you through quite a bespoke intervention with an individual student. And then I'll talk about voice activities, which use different methods to ask the same question, adapted to involve various larger student groups. And then there'll be a whistle-stop tour of some other accessible voice activities which may inspire your practice or studies or life. These case studies are fully practice-based. They serve the needs of students at the time or the provision. Just trying to, yeah, we go. Okay, so some context. The following voice activities were created for a large specialist college for students with special educational needs and disabilities in the UK. So for over 10 years, I worked there. As you can see, various roles from teacher of business administration to autism advisor more recently. So first, I'm going to tell you a story, a story about Tim. So Tim had a diagnosis of autism with additional learning disabilities and was a past student of the college. He was a student of a land-based studies programme where he had the opportunity to work in animal care, horticulture, recycling and conservation. He was working towards an entry to qualification in skills for working life. Now, Tim had been accessing supported work experience at a local children's hospice, with a group of students doing ground maintenance there. There was understandably, it was a safeguarded environment, and it was not acceptable for any visitors to be walking around unescorted. Unfortunately, Tim regularly needed to walk away from the group, especially when anxious or needing time out from the task or the environment. This was just not feasible at this placement, and there were not enough staff to accompany Tim away from the group. Naturally, this caused him distress, and it became clear that other work options needed to be sought with him. It was at this point when I was asked to step in and do some focused work with him by his tutor, as he'd been also flagged by the safeguarding team at the college as frequently arriving late to work sessions on the campus. I was told that Tim hated the word work, so it'd been quite difficult for staff to have a conversation about work with him. I'd recently made it known that I was looking for a student case study to inform an assignment on the Masters in Autism Adults. I was looking into meaningful work opportunities. So I was therefore doubly motivated to engage Tim in some form of communication around his work experience and future aspirations. To work with Tim successfully, I needed to gain greater insights into how his autism affected his work and opportunities, what strengths and challenges it brought him. I began collecting information from his past reports and review notes and talked to his two teachers. I learned about Tim's communication differences, his literal communication style, his passion for trains, and his echolalic reciting of favourite Thomas the Tank Engine episodes. The more I learnt about Tim, the more I felt that land-based studies was a peculiar choice for him to make, as I'd read several times that he hated getting dirty or wet. This ruled out several key tasks within his work area on campus. He would refuse weeding tasks and anything involving compost, preferring to push a wheelbarrow or clip fruit brushes. When I tried to approach the subject of work with Tim, I initially had limited success and felt I needed a different approach. The answer came one day when Tim began to talk to me about the weather we'd been having with Storm Doris. What was interesting to me was that he was making sense of the storm through a story from a Thomas the Tank Engine episode. He began by asking me questions relating to the storyline, and when I said I didn't know, he proceeded to tell me the answers in the form of the script of the story. It became clear that Tim was trying to make sense of the recent storm and the upheaval it had caused to his weekend routine. As mentioned, Tim hated getting wet, and he'd been unwilling to venture out to the swimming pool that weekend because the wind had broken his umbrella. Through the theme of the story, we discussed alternative ways of keeping dry and the possibility of mending his umbrella. Inspired, I tried to look for the episode on YouTube and found the story, Henry's Forest, although about a storm, was packed full of problem solving and teamwork, both useful work skills. I'd stumbled upon a way of exploring such concepts with Tim in a personalised and fun way. During the same week, I had also watched Life Animated, a documentary following David Susskind through childhood into adulthood. It showed how his strong attraction to Disney films had given him a way of understanding the world, and had also given his family a way into understanding and communicating with him. Special interests or passions have historically been discouraged and seen as obsessive and counterproductive to personal development and growth. But in an interview, David's father argued that he had found David's interests could be used as a codebreaker, map, mirror, or vessel. I could see a parallel with David in Tim's attempt at understanding the winds using Thomas the Tank storylines. And as the results with the Susskind family were so extraordinary, I decided to explore the idea myself to support the conversation about work. Using the Henry's Forest script and images, I produced a questionnaire which both told the story and asked some rather important questions relating to Tim's aspirations, preferences, difficulties, and strengths relating to work. I would use his answers to contribute to a person-centred work profile to be shared with staff in the future. Tim responded very well to the questionnaire. It gained his immediate interest, and he even elongated the storyline where I had abridged it. His tutor said that his responses had given her a more valuable insight into his life than any previous conversation. The story went something like this. Henry the Green Engine had lived on the island for many years. He wouldn't want to live anywhere else. Where would you like to live? Henry's favourite place was the forest. Where is your favourite place to be? Henry can remember the day when he helped bring some new trees into the forest. What do you do to help the college look nicer? So the questionnaire helped me to ask questions about specific jobs as well as more generic work or life-related issues. What makes you feel better? Do you like brushing leaves and rubbish off paths? Do you like looking after animals and keeping their homes clean? Do you like making things out of wood? What makes you sad? What is the most important job you've done? Do you like planting flowers and trees? What is your favourite job in land-based studies? And what is difficult for you when doing a job with other people? The activity confirmed that Tim was very much focused on returning home, but also revealed that a strong reason for this was that he believed he had a very important job there, looking after his grandmother. Through the activity, he confirmed that he found it difficult to work in groups when his peers were messing around, and that he self-regulated by finding somewhere quiet. This may have explained his lateness to sessions to avoid the noisy rush of students. With Tim's permission, the completed questionnaire was shared with the land-based studies teachers. I also spoke to his programme area manager and asked if maybe he could work in a garden centre shop for work experience, as he could develop his organisational skills there. In the shop, he would not get dirty or wet, and he would be able to walk off for short negotiated periods. This was actioned and went reasonably well. He worked on tasks such as weighing and packing bird food and checking deliveries against delivery notes. I've shared this story with you to show you that by spending a little bit of time, you can create something very engaging, tailored to suit the needs and interests of an individual learner. So now we're going to focus on group activities. I imagine a few people listening now think, well, that's all right, but we've got like 20 students. We can't do this for every single student. So we're going to look now at group activities and different ways of asking the same question. And the question I've focused on is, do you feel safe at college? So one of my roles was as a personal tutor. Excuse me. So part of the role of a personal tutor, you were asked to complete students' perceptions of course or SPOC forms on a regular basis with your tutees. As someone who had completed Makaton training, I was often allocated tutees who had more significant communication needs. Although the forms had been skillfully adapted using Makaton symbols, they are often not accessible for some of my tutees due to the concepts involved. Students would smile, nod, give thumbs up and say yes, but not always understand the question. I felt sure there could be a more accessible way to find out about students' experiences of college. A few years later, I was conducting a dissertation study for my Masters in Education. I had recruited a small student research group at one of the college's satellite provisions who were trialling an activity to find out how students felt at college. They walked around the campus and coloured each room or area of the map depending on how they felt there. They used zones of regulation colour coding, where blue represents illness, sadness, or boredom, green represented happiness and safety, yellow represented unease or anxiety, and red the stronger negative emotions. The group then conducted peer research using their adapted maps and was supported to make sense of their findings. The following year, I was asked to explore this question of do you feel safe in college with the college's student council. Firstly, I thought it was important to gain insight into the students' understanding of the concept safe. So I created a couple of simple activities to support conversations around this. And these activities were done online due to COVID restrictions at the time. My first thought was to use the walking map activity, but as I said, online. So I was trying to work out ways of adapting a physical activity into a digital one. And this is what I came up with. And someone who was working in this building had gone around taking photos of the empty classrooms because there were no students there. And I put them onto a PowerPoint, which I shared online. And the activity was that the students could drag and drop a coloured arrow onto specific areas of the college building. And learners who wished to explain their responses in more detail could type into the text box provided. Responses were collated and discussed in student council meetings, and the findings were then shared with the senior leadership team. The activity is featured in 2 publications linked below. It's my arrow. Once lockdown restrictions lifted, I was able to conduct a follow-up activity with the student council, looking at the same question, but answering it via photography. Once the group had trialled it, they were taught the Makaton signs for the question, where do you feel safe at college? And were supported to involve their peers in the photo voice activity. The resulting photographs and comments were presented on a very large format poster, which was installed outside the college's student union building, allowing the findings to be accessible and visible. Excuse me. So I'm now going to do a quick whistle top tour of some other accessible and creative voice activities. So you could try using photo voice to explore responses to a specific question. One positive aspect of this activity is, in my experience, that people often go directly to the area of issue. There's less procrastination, there's no worrying about, oh, I might sound too negative about this. You could also utilise GoPro cameras or more accessible handheld devices to support people with dexterity issues. However, the significance of photographs is not always clear and may require further questioning. If you wish to gain insight into students' experiences over a period of time, then mapping activities like this river map might be fun. There's no need to verbalise. There's codes that you can use, like keys. So a whirlpool is like experiences that were challenging, and maybe waves could be like experiences that were fun. Yeah, but some students prefer quite a standard month by month timeline map of experiences over time. It depends on preferences. Digital click and drag activities minimise printing and may be a good way to support students to rank their experiences. And also they can zoom into the pictures, which will help if they're visually impaired. To share tangible activities can also be fun. Tokens and tins are named the activity. Could be used to get student responses for a variety of questions. And as you can see in the tins there, these are actually velcroed onto the tins, so there's numerous options for students to physically vote for. Students that have more dexterity issues, you could just take the lid off the tin, so you didn't have to post a small thing. But it's a fun activity, and also you can involve the students in making sense of the findings. You can bring in numeracy, etc. To share their experiences with their peers, which is something that students, in my experience, have really enjoyed doing. Students could organise guided tours of their particular work area or accommodation. Being in situ prompts memory. That's quite a key thing. If you're going to ask a student how they feel in a particular room, then maybe take them to that room. And last one, Lego reflections. So students can create scenes out of Lego to help them reflect on their experiences of college. So this is a fun one as well. Okay. So thank you for your time. I don't know if I've got, oh yeah, here we go. Before finishing, I'd just like to extend an invitation for those of you who are educational practitioners and who are keen to develop DISN knowledge of student-led and accessible approaches to student voice. An invitation to join the Inclusive Students as Researchers community of practice. It's a collaboration of professionals who are passionate about inclusive education and increasing opportunities for young people to be heard. It currently enjoys an international membership of professionals at various career stages and from different educational stages and sectors. The ACER community of practice is a sharing space, a space to share experiences, expertise, methodologies, resources, ideas, information, triumphs and disasters. So feel free to contact me about this if you think it might be a nice thing to do. My email is hap605@student.bham.ac.uk. And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Helen. That was brilliant. I have to declare my bias. My favourite is the Lego. I just think it's so tactile and colourful, and it allows such a lot of creativity. But I hope you have found we talked quite a lot about what can be done in theory, and it is so powerful seeing and hearing very concrete examples of what can be done and the variety of things. Because again, another thing that we talk about a lot is the need to be flexible so that we're suiting individual preferences. So thank you, that was brilliant. And a reminder that Helen is happy to answer questions at the end. I can see that the chat is up and running, which is great news, and there's some good posts on there. So feel free to post. Before we move on, just to say that we're going to put some information on further support and other useful links into the chat now, in case that would be helpful for you. And if you were interested in joining our part-time online course for autism in adults yourself, you can find a link in the chat. I know that some of you are already with us, and if you'd like to be added to our mailing list for future events, then we're putting an email address for that in the chat too, with instructions on how you can do that. So now on to our second presenter, Emma Masefield. Emma has worked in the field of autism since her undergraduate days and completed her master's at the University of Birmingham, also studying autism in adulthood. She's going to explore strategies for enabling participation through her work in a rural day setting, and how some of the lessons from this very specific context might be applied more generally. So I will hand over to you now, Emma.
Thank you. I'll just work on this sharing my screen situation. Okay. Oh, here we go. Sorry, everyone. Right. There we go. I'll see if I can. I don't know if I can move myself. There we are. I'm out of my way anyway. There we go. Hope that's okay. So this was the title of my dissertation, In Their Own Space and Time. But first things first, my name is Emma Masefield, and I've been working in autism for over 30 years now, 35 years, mainly in education in Oxfordshire, although I spent a bit of time in Dubai as well, working there for 4 years in a special needs situation. And I've worked with children ranging from 2 to adults up to 40, age 40. And I now work at Pennyhooks Farm Trust, a care farm on the Oxfordshire and Wiltshire border. Lydia Otter is the CEO, and she and I have been working together since our early days in the Oxfordshire schools. We've known some of the young people at Pennyhooks since they were 5, and now 35 or even 40. Yes, and my contact details are just there. First one's the website for Pennyhooks, and the second one's my email address. Just to reassure everyone that I have received permissions from the people featured in this presentation, either from them directly or from their parents. So Pennyhooks provides, we're a charity that provides work opportunities to autistic adults in an environment that offers supported work with adapted facilities. Most of our client group, known to us as students, are non-speaking or have limited speech, and all of them need full one-to-one support. At Pennyhooks, we believe that our students wake up each morning facing a mountain of challenge just to function in a world that isn't really set up for them. And so we ask our staff to always support and never challenge, and to build from success to success. We present and respond to things positively and try hard to never say no unless there is an emergency situation. Activities and tasks are carefully introduced and organised to ensure we build from this success to success. Here, preparation is the key. Our staff are trained to have well thought out jobs with all equipment organised and where little can go wrong, so that students will have a meaningful and successful experience. The origins of our approach comes from the work of Anne Donnellan, Martha Leary and David Hill, who looked extensively at research into how the movements of differently classified individuals were described. They found that movements seen in disorders such as Parkinson's were attributed to neurological differences, where these similar movements seen in autistic people were given a socially determined label. This next slide will give us a few examples of that. So, for example, movement types such as the inability to voluntarily move was given the name akinesia in the movement disorders group, and yet this same behaviour, when relating to autistic people, was described as non-compliance or refusal to do something. A slowness of movement was termed bradykinesia in the movement disorder group, yet in the autistic literature, it was termed laziness. Lydia and I found the work of Donnellan and colleagues so enlightening because they looked at things a different way. When we were working in the schools a long time ago, this was quite new and revolutionary back in, this was in the late 90s actually. And it gave us a whole new positive lens through which to observe and to respond to the behaviours of the children we were working with. So our approach was built on this new perspective to enable engagement. We never assume that our students don't want to do something just because they're not moving to take part. Instead, we attend to their sensory and movement difference needs to see if we can make it possible for them to take part. How do we go about this? Well, these next few slides will show you a few examples, though I can't go into all the details of what we do in this time-limited forum. The exterior and interior of our buildings is something we've given much thought to. This is our main building, known as Apple Tree House, which is about to celebrate its 20-year anniversary this year. And it's designed to draw people into the front door with the two arms of the building kind of welcoming you in. The ground surfaces are also distinct. You'll notice there's one red brick path that leads up to the front door, and there's another surface which takes you round the side to the back of the building when you come back from your jobs with the muddy boots. These pathways provide clear visual clues to our students about how to organise their movements and which way to go. You'll notice the deliberate mistake in the photograph that there's a picnic bench right in the way of one of the pathways. That was because for this photograph they'd been mowing, so sorry, I've chosen a photograph with a bit of an obstacle, but pretend that's not there. The equipment is also something we've given much thought to, and in terms of the students' movement needs. So this is a shelf of the hen shed, which is at the right height for people to be able to clean out without having to bend awkwardly. Also, the barrow, you'll see, fits neatly under to enable the students to easily scrape into it. The barrows are on 3 wheels, and for those students who are unsteady on their feet, this provides greater stability. They can either push or pull them depending on their own movement needs. Some, of course, like the more standard one-wheeled barrow, which we also have plenty of. The other thing you'll notice in this photograph is that the long stretch of tarmac, which directs the course of movement from the animal enclosures, which are at the sides of the tarmac, down to the muck heap, where the students need to take their wheelbarrows. This is a student here coming back from having deposited the dirty bedding from the muck heap at the muck heap. So you'll see that the movement is allowed to flow and not having to stop and start and change direction for the young people. In this photograph, you might think it would be more efficient to place the trailer right next to the cuttings pile that is behind the chap at the back of the photo, so that it could be more easily just loaded straight on, lean down, pick up, load on, except that the young man carrying the branch moves in sweeping arcs, and so the trailer has been positioned at the right distance for his movement, so that he can walk, sweep round, place the branch on the trailer and walk back to the pile. If we positioned the trailer any closer, he wouldn't be able to do this within the pattern of his movement, and he would need to keep moving away. And this might look like that non-compliance I mentioned earlier, and that he doesn't want to do the job, when in fact, if you set it up correctly for him, he happily joins in. Of course, he's not forced to do any of these things, and he could move away if he wanted to. But we find that if we set things up for his movement needs, he shows he wants to take part in the activities and the jobs. This job has been set up specifically for this group to give everyone the space they need. If the chap from the previous photograph were in this group, his barrow would be positioned further away to allow his movement. Now, this young man has a very fast walking pace. He's tall with long legs and often outpaces his support staff. The farm's walks are peppered with gates such as this one, and he has been taught to wait at the gates. This has been a great and non-challenging way to ensure he is safe. In fact, Having something to sit on or lean against enables this young man to wait for others. Without such props, he often moves away from groups or carries on walking, and people may wrongly assume that he doesn't like being in groups. He's actually very sociable, and so it isn't that he doesn't want to be in the groups and be with other people, but without the props to help him wait, his body just keeps on moving. We initially began teaching gross motor activities to the students. These big activities of rolling out the bales of straw give great feedback to the body and help to train the students to gain greater control over their body's movements. From there, we taught them to use large tools such as this scoop and rake to scrape up straw. And once we knew they could handle those tools safely, we moved on to using hand tools such as trowels in the garden and offering jobs in the workshops, and even to using powered tools such as this electric screwdriver. So all of this we were already doing. So what was the focus of the research then? We knew it was successful because the students showed us they wanted more. Parents reported how they packed their bags the night before, ready for the next day on the farm, or they sang happily in the bath the evening after having been at the farm, or they keenly marked on their calendars, farm open, when they knew they could come. So whilst we knew anecdotally that our approach worked, we wanted to test it against the research literature. And so we were interested to see how we fit, how current is pennyhooks, and to evaluate our approach against the newer research. So I wanted to find out, is movement difference theory current? And if so, what is the research saying? And if it isn't, what should we be thinking about instead? This was the final title of this study. And in their own space and time, as I said at the beginning, the longer title being Autistic Adults Have Difficulty Being Understood by Non-Autistic People. Can attending to the movement differences between them help to bridge the gap in finding a common language? I'm only going to be able to unpack some of this today. So I was surprised and pleased to see that some very large scale and very recent studies had been carried out into movement difference and autism. And they concluded that differences in movement are significant and central to autism, that they should be added to core diagnostic criteria and should be given consideration due to the impact on autistic people. The research also said that movement and communication are inextricably linked, which is not surprising when we think about the non-verbal communications such as gesture. Also that movement comes before speech. Intentional movement is the precursor to speech. So organising the body for speech requires us first to be able to organise our bodies for larger, outwardly observable movements. And the way we move affects how we are viewed by others. So erratic or slow movements may lead to people to believe we have erratic or slow thinking, perhaps, and even to make judgments about our intelligence levels. What does the research show that autistic people are saying, despite the increased general awareness of autism? Well, autistic people are saying that their needs are still not being fully understood, and this has a huge impact on their well-being and the quality of their lives. Autism continues to be defined by deficit. Autistic people are seen as being wrong or not normal. And even the more progressive thinkers, when they talk about difference, still mean that autistic people are different and need to be trained to be more normal. This kind of response to this type of thinking lends itself to approaches such as ABA and social skills training groups. Autistic people need to be trained to behave more normally. It's often said that autistic people don't understand how to interact with non-autistic people, but what are autistic people themselves saying? Those who are able to contribute directly to the research say that actually the lack of understanding goes both ways, and that in the case of empathy, say, it is not actually that autistic people lack empathy for non-autistic people, but that there is a lack of mutual empathy. The problem is bidirectional, not with one, but between both. The research, what does the research say about movement and autism? Well, it says movements of autistic people are out of step with those of non-autistic people, and that this leads to confusing and unsatisfying interactions between them. However, Further research suggests that it is not they who are out of step, but that autistic people and non-autistic people are out of step with each other. So my research sought to examine this lack of synchrony between the two communicative partners to see where do the differences lie. Sorry, I clicked on the wrong thing. There we go. And I wanted to find out what the impact was of recognising and addressing the movement differences between autistic and non-autistic adults. What's the impact of adjusting external factors on the movement of autistic adults and their ability to engage in set tasks? And what's the impact of non-autistic people attempting to match or attune to the movement signatures of autistic adults? How did I go about it? Well, I took loads and loads of videos of students carrying out their normal activities. It's quite easy for me to do because I'm well within that culture, and me walking around with a video is not unusual to them. I made lots of observational notes and discussed things with their families and their support workers and other colleagues, and of course with the students themselves where possible. And I spent hours and hours analysing all of this and used thematic analysis to draw out the themes. One of the main findings was that we may miss communications which are meaningful. The research centred around the videos of certain tasks, and this extract is for the task where students were loading logs from a pile onto a trailer. Everyone was wearing gardening gloves to prevent splinters. And David gently taps his gloved hand at the end of the task with his gloved right hand, just so you can see that. His support worker happened to be looking the other way. E, who was me actually, I held out my hand to David and I said, "You can give me the gloves." "Yeah, good thinking, David. I'll take your gloves." And David walked towards me and took off his gloves. Now, I happened to be facing him and his support worker was facing the other way. And she didn't see this gesture. He was about to walk away with him still wearing his gloves, which in itself isn't a big deal. However, it might have been to him actually, because the gesture could have been missed had I not noticed and had I not been facing him. Donnellan and Co. say that to predict a person's actions, one needs to truly understand. The support worker may not have reflected that David might want to communicate about his glove or about anything in that particular moment. As someone with a range of communication options available, it's hard to imagine what it's like to have no voice at all. David is non-speaking, as I said earlier. This extract pertains to a second task, loading logs from a barrow to a woodshed. The transcript shows that the phrases in bold were clear communications from student P, the SW being support workers. Whilst Philip did not name log as the thing he was holding in "I've got a thing," it was clear from the transcript that he was talking about the task in hand. His support worker only responded on one occasion of him saying it, and the other support workers not at all. This and other findings suggest that his echolalia is a barrier to other people's understanding of his communicative intention. Research says that when words are repeated, even when they are meaningful, they lose their potency. It's often said that autistic people lack motivation for social relationships and engagement. And yet, in the example given here, Philip was making many overtures to engage socially whilst involved in a shared task. That his communication was not fully conventional resulted in it not being picked up, however many times he tried. Finding two, showed that increased body control seems to promote more conventional movements and language for communication. This slide relates to the task rolling out of a bale of straw. In photo C of this sequence, the support worker was commenting on a feeling of happiness in Tyler. Photo E shows Tyler smiling at the support worker and joining in with a social gesture of a sort of high five. In F, you can see Tyler with the ring around his finger there, makes a pointing gesture. But actually this was missed by the support worker at the time. It was a fleeting movement and possibly only seen because I was analysing these videos frame by frame. Just before the pointing gesture, the support worker had verbally praised Tyler, and his response was to point to the end of the bell, which is just out of our vision of the photograph. as if to say, yes, I did that, or there it is, the thing I did. Although I feel I need to take care when attributing words, spoken words, to someone who does not speak. Pointing for this student is not a frequent gesture. It requires complex motor demands that may be unavailable to him most of the time. However, engaging in a task such as pushing out the bale, which is the job he had just done, may have contributed to him regulating his bodily sensations and gave him greater control in the moment to produce an intentional communicative movement. Unfortunately, it was another one of those missed communications at the time, probably because the support worker was not expecting it. This next extract here shows 2 transcripts for task 1, which is the one of loading logs onto a trailer. When compared, they revealed 2 quite different experiences of Philip, and 2 different experiences for him as well, actually. Analysis of the extracts show that in figure 12, if you look down the verbal language column, that shows that Philip used a range of phrases which would be conventionally meaning to the speaker and to other people. With my 2 best friends, welcome, well done, there you go, we can go now, we can go now. And this contrasts with the language in figure 13, far right column, where the sounds perhaps are meaningful to him, ah, ooh, ooh, but may not be understood by others. Although the calling out of timber repeatedly wasn't lost on me, given that we were loading logs which had fallen from a tree. The notes in the columns for movement, if you look in the middle columns, also revealed 2 vastly different pictures of this young man. Figure 12 is characterised as being steady and fluid, whereas figure 13 is characterised as being fast and moving fast and vigorous with thrusting and walking backwards and forwards. The lack of fluidity and control in Philip's movements coincided with a reduction in his verbal communication. Put another way, when he had greater control over his movements, as in figure 12, he had more control over his spoken output, and his verbal language met more conventional standards, and he produced language that would be meaningful to most. When I looked at the environmental factors for these 2 scenarios, there was a lot of noise, a lot of wind noise audible on the camera. It was a very noisy day that day, and other participants of the task were talking loudly. And maybe this is something that challenged this young man at the time and compromised his ability to talk in a way that other people understood. Finding number 3 said that adjusting external factors can have a positive impact on the movement and engagement of students. This here shows the analysis of 3 occasions of task 1, the loading onto the trailer, again of the logs. In this 1A here, sorry, David was struggling to engage with the task of loading the logs. It was seen on the video that every time someone walked across his path, he stopped. And you can see he only completed 2 turns in 6 minutes. So for the next occasion, we set up his own path between the log pile and the trailer and asked no one to cross it. So we changed the external factors. He then completed many more turns, even though the length of task was the same time. So in 6 minutes, he completed 10 turns. In the second occasion, he was supported by his mother, and it may have been that he engages better when he's supported by her. But actually, if you look across to 1D, he's supported by a support worker, and his level of engagement was the same. He completed 10 turns in just over 6 minutes. So when he was asked about this, he typed, "I sort of lose knowing where to go," when I asked him about 1A. So we changed the external factors, and this had an influence on his engagement levels for this task. Furthermore, finding 4 tells us that certain conditions provide optimal experiences for students and their support workers. The external conditions of task 1, 2, and 3 for Tyler were shown to have an impact on the levels of his engagement. In task 1, you can see him at the corner here of the photo. He hung around the outskirts of the task, occasionally joining in, but looking anxious and engaging in a range of self-regulatory behaviours. In task 2 and 3, he engaged for the whole activity. And in task 3, he smiled throughout. And this is him at the end of the task. There are a number of factors that are different about the tasks, and they are all external and therefore possible to influence. if you were looking out for changes in his engagement being about external differences rather than internal differences. We could say in task 1 that he was not complying with the task, but the question surely is, why not? Task 2 and 3 show that when the conditions were right for him, he is in fact happy to engage. Finding 5 showed that when movement and communication signatures are fully attended to, mutually satisfying experiences can take place. Now I'm going to attempt to share a video with you. I'm hoping it will play from here in a minute. This short piece of video shows a support worker and her student, Stephen, unloading logs into a woodshed. Movements which are particular to Stephen include a seeming need to move continuously. He's easily distracted and attracted by the visual. Things catch his eye quickly and seem to create a need in him to move towards them. Visual distractions, particularly people, make him lose focus on tasks and activities and drive him towards them. Put another way, he's very social and loves to engage with people. However, the moving from person to person can interfere with his interactions, as his mind, or his body perhaps, seems set on engaging with the next. This makes his interactions fleeting and possibly less satisfying. At least this is how they sometimes are experienced by his caregivers. Whilst in other people's terms, it may not seem like a long interaction, this video is less than 2 minutes. It shows a moment of sustained and total focus, something that Stephen struggles to experience. I'll move myself out of the way. So she's ready, she bends down, helping him if he needs it. She's there waiting for him. He points, does a thumbs up.
We don't have sound, Emma, is that okay?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, that's fine then.
Okay, great.
So she's pointing and gesturing. She's saying, another one, Stephen. And he's pointing. And he gives her the log. Ready for the next one. She's ready to catch it just in case he slips. All ready to catch it for him, help him out. And here we go, the last one. And a beautiful smile from him. Sorry, I forgot to switch on the sound. I did the technical stuff earlier and I forgot how to do it in the moment. So sorry about that, everybody. So what did all this tell us anyway? In each of the cases of miscommunication, the support workers were not wittingly ignoring the communications of their students. They simply missed them because they weren't expecting them or they misinterpreted them. Paying attention to these signs of non-standard expression requires real focus from the non-autistic person. So for more equal communication across partners, those who have different, possibly fewer tools, need other people to pay greater attention to all their signals, not only those that meet conventional forms. So we need to listen with our eyes as well as our ears. We also need to think, does it support or does it challenge? If something's not working, let's think about this. Is it the physical space? Is it the time? Is it the timing? Is it the activity itself or the social environment? If it supports and things are going well and you want to develop things, build gradually on the success. Change only one thing at a time. Can they use the tool when working with their support person and no one else is nearby? Can they translate that to a different location? Can one more person be added to make it a team job? But do these things gradually and one by one. You can see in the video that there was no one else in that scenario, only the camera holder. So that provided a perfect context for that young man to be able to engage in that job and give it his full focus. If there were other people around, he'd have been easily very distracted. If the activity challenges, then think, what can I do to change? What can I change about the activity? Does the activity match the person's skills? Have I got the setup right? Have I got everything organised? Are the physical distances okay? Is the space okay? Or is there too much space? Not enough space? Am I expecting them to cross different surfaces, which may make it challenging for them? Some of our young people find it really hard to go from, say, brick to concrete or concrete to gravel. And those transitions are really important for us to notice and facilitate how we can remedy that for them. Think about the social environment. Are there too many people? One young man said, I need not too many others there, though I like them. It stops me concentrating. And are the people too noisy for the person? The noise of others is a big concern for some of our students here at Pennyhurst. Some become even distressed at the sound of other people's voices. So we need to wait and watch. Behaviour is the key to communication. Don't always leap in, as long as it's safe, of course. Watch and wait to see what happens. Have curiosity and wonder what actually is going on here for this young person. And can I make things any easier or better for them? And marvel, have wonder at their resilience to keep trying. The bottom line is that true empathy is really difficult if you have no personal experience of a condition like autism. I have no idea what it feels like to be autistic. However, I can offer compassion and support, and I can believe the best in those I support and not make reductive assumptions based upon the challenges I've experienced in supporting them. Instead, I can think about what can I do to enable them. After all, as one of my non-speaking students typed, from his very clear lived experience of being a member of a marginalised group, we are people who are really wanting to be heard. So from him and from all of us at Pennyhooks, thank you for listening.
Fantastic. Thank you, Emma. Really inspirational. I think that will have resonated with a lot of people, to be honest, in terms of when you work closely with someone, learning so much more about them and seeing that they are often communicating much more than initially seems to be the case. We have got time for a couple of very quick questions, but we are nearly out of time. So if you have any questions, please do post them in the Q&A block, please. Lots of messages coming through the chat of appreciation. I have got a question for either of you, if you would like to think about it. And that is, what do you think have been the main barriers for you in your work, and what strategies have been useful to help you overcome them? I don't know who fancies taking that one.
I mean, I think from our point of view, funding is the biggest barrier. To raise over £20,000 a year just to meet our running costs. But the issues with funding seem to stem from a lack of understanding about what we're doing and what's possible for our client group. The focus is on the need for care and not on the need for meaningful activity or purposeful lives. I don't know, we've actually been compared by social workers to being like a theme park or a petting farm, where an entrance fee is paid and then care hours are awarded to enable the person to have someone support them as they go around. But that particular social worker has never been to Pennyhooks, needless to say, and does not have. I mean, forums like this are incredibly empowering for us. We are emboldened by the interest in our work, actually, to fight this cause. We were sad to see that our client group didn't make it really into the Buckland Review to do with employment, and yet we're offering work-based opportunities for this particular client group of non-speaking individuals. And we give them the experience of having a working life, and yet this didn't come into the employment context because they don't meet the traditional standards of productivity and employment.
Obviously, that's very frustrating. Helen, is there anything that you wanted to say about that? I mean, I think that balance between, duty of care and giving people a quality of life and opportunities and the choice to take risks sometimes, it's a delicate balancing act.
I think the original question, the one what I found difficult, was probably that transference into the digital landscape. Get so used to like building rapport with people face to face, getting a sense of who they are, and to do that online, the first point of contact, I found that was quite a challenging one, but I think what I've learned from that is that it's another method, isn't it? It's another way of doing things, and actually, it's helped me develop um, an activity into a different space, and it so now I can do like a hybrid sort of workshop because people can do it in person and online. But yeah, I do prefer face to face so much more. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm afraid we've gone a little bit over time, so we're going to have to stop there. But I think, Alex, is it the case that we can send information out to the attendees, because then we can pick up the questions that we haven't addressed in that email? Is that a possibility?
I'm more than happy to send information out to the list of attendees. It's not a problem at all. I can also send once it's finished session, the recorded version and put into the YouTube, so I can send the link to everybody as well. And there'll be an opportunity if people then want to ask any question, they can forward it to you. I'm sure that's possible.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. And a reminder, if you weren't able to copy the link in the chat, I'm sorry about that. We don't really know why that happened. But you should have had a reminder about the event today. So you can just click reply to that. If you want to be added to the mailing list, just let me know and we can do that. So thank you so much to everyone for attending today and taking the time. We really appreciate it. We hope you found it useful. And most of all, huge thanks to Helen and Emma for sharing their really fabulous work. I'm sure you'll agree. And I hope that from this you've got something that you're going to take away and make use of tomorrow or next week, and think about. Very, very inspiring, I think. Okay, thank